How's it going? Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, to a fantastic video today. I'm excited because we finally get another Soulslike. Wow, another Soulslike?
It is just like Dark Souls. Just like Dark Souls. It must be like Dark Souls.
Now, I am actually excited for this game. I'm not surprisingly burnt out on Souls-like games, but to me, there are two different categories to Souls-like games. You get the platinum tier of Souls-likes, okay? And for me, personally, this is a personal opinion, so calm down, don't shit your pants just yet, okay? I would say, that is kind of for Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and Lies of P being up there as the kind of platinum tier, the highest degree of Souls-like video games, okay? And then you get the kind of B tier Souls-like games, and this can be your anime Dark Souls, this can be, stuff like The Surge, or the original Mortal Shell, which I would firmly place in there, maybe Lords of the Fallen, stuff like that. I know everyone has different, tiers and how they rank things, but that's kind of where I sit. Now, of course, that doesn't mean to say that those games are bad and the games I like are the best, but, Bloodborne as well being in platinum tier, but that's just kind of, the quality standards that I look for when I'm kind of ranking these games, so you get the overall feeling for what I like in these types of games.
Into the mouth. Nice.
Now here we are with Mortal Shell 2, and today I'm going to be giving you my Mortal Shell 2 review based on everything that I've got hands on with the press access, not just the beta / kind of demo build that they had, but obviously I can only show you this type of gameplay so far, okay? So I don't break any rules or anything like that, but this is an early access Mortal Shell 2 review. Now I also forgot to mention First Berserker Kazan, which I would also put in the platinum tier, so now you truly understand where I want to rank these kinds of games. So Mortal Shell 2 is a very interesting game because I wouldn't say it's in platinum tier. And before people go crazy, saying that I'm putting Bloodborne and Elden Ring in the same category, technically they're not Dark Souls, okay? They are Souls-likes, even if they are made by From Software, they are technically still Souls-like experiences because everything originated from Demon Souls, Dark Souls, okay? That is where it all came from. You could argue Kingsfield, but I'm not here to debate you. I absolutely love these games. I don't need to prove myself as a die-hard, Dark Souls fan. I absolutely love these games. I've even got the little limited edition Crystal Lizard here. Yes, I'm a nerd. Thank you, thank you. But I just want you to know, where I'm trying to rank this, because it's important before we get into the positives and negatives of this Mortal Shell 2 review, because I don't think it's in B tier, but I wouldn't place it in platinum tier. It's obviously striving for that experience, but it fails in key aspects for me personally, but it doesn't mean it's a bad game. But what makes, the difference between a B tier Souls-like experience and a platinum tier Souls-like experience, okay? Let me just break that down before we get into the positives and negatives. And to me, it all comes down to thematics. It all comes down to the art style and the meaning behind these games, because let's be honest, I mean, some of you just like it for the hack and slash Souls-like combat, okay, and that's it. You don't care what you play. You can play Souls-likes forever. Doesn't matter their kind of storytelling, their world building, their lore, anything like that. As long as the gameplay is good, that's all that matters. To me, that's not the case, okay? Artistry matters, thematics matter. The philosophy behind Dark Souls, I could go into a massive analysis of that, which I'm saving for another video at some point. Just how much meaning that game has. So what's so interesting about Dark Souls is it has such an interesting mythology and philosophy behind everything, because everything is manifested. Souls are actually manifested into the game world. Dying has, explanation. The battle against, going hollow, falling into nihilism, and losing your sanity, your identity, the roles that we all play within, society, like shopkeeper and stuff like that. Now, it's not to say that Mortal Shell 2 and Mortal Shell doesn't have interesting lore or interesting world building and backstory, but to me, it's kind of in the same category of Lords of Fallen, where it's just kind of all over the place and it's not really coherent in its thematics and art design. So that's why I'm not placing it in the high tier, because it doesn't have much, you know, kind of deliberate world building and artistry behind it. It's very clear that they're very much, you know, kind of obsessed with Dark Souls. They want to emulate Dark Souls. And what makes a good Souls-like to me is not just a game that can emulate Dark Souls, but builds on top of it, builds on top of the Souls-like formula, like Lies of P did in so many ways. And to me, it's so good at emulating Dark Souls and Elden Ring and that type of gameplay, but it misses something fundamental. But here's the big but. It doesn't mean it's not a great game. This is in fact a fantastic Souls-like with everything else. So let's get into the positives and negatives.
Let's go already!
Now, I do hope you enjoy this Mortal Shell 2 review and this early access look at Mortal Shell 2. I'm very excited to be talking about this game because it's actually a quality game, and we don't get many quality Souls-likes. We get plenty of Souls-likes, but we don't get many quality Souls-likes, and this is definitely a quality Souls-like. It's so much of an improvement compared to the first game, that's for sure. So first of all, this game is much bigger, much more open-ended, way more exploration. It's got a lot of kind of verticality to it as well, where you can kind of explore in kind of different areas depending on your abilities and stuff like that. The bosses in this are probably one of the best you know, bosses I've seen in a Souls-like video game, to be honest, because they have so much creative charm to them. So much, and you know, honestly, it outperforms some of the bosses in the other Souls-likes I've listed in like Platinum tier. You know, like you can fight a shepherd and he can summon like mad sheep. This also has way more weapons, way more shells compared to the first game, and a big open kind of world to explore. Now, it's not fully integrated, like you have to fast travel to these kind of big open zone areas, but it is still a much bigger game. It's also got tons and tons of unique dungeons, and the dungeons are actually tied to the checkpoints, to the bonfire system itself, which is super cool, and they have hidden loot, extra weapons in them, and hidden bosses, which is a lot of fun. Now, this is going to probably take you around 30 to 40 hours to actually see everything, so it is a big game, and I have put a lot of time into this already. Okay, so the first positive I'm going to jump in with in this Mortal Shell 2 review is the animations, okay? The animations in this game have got such production quality to them, a huge step up from the first one. Like, your character will be doing some pretty badass shit, okay? You know, like you're out of the Matrix or something. It's also got a weird aesthetic where it's kind of medieval, but it's mixed in with a little bit more later technology, so you do have access to firearms. There's plenty of guns actually to use. There's even an automatic machine gun later on in the game. There's also like a crossbow that shoots giant axes at enemies. I have actually seen some of this stuff, even though I can't show you it due to the early access, you know, rules and everything like that. But yeah, there's tons of crazy stuff in here. There's also loads of different weapon types, and the best thing about this game is you can play as a goddamn badass bard. A bard, he said. There's a bard in the dungeon. Yeah, so it's super awesome because when you do stagger an enemy, you can do all of these crazy finishers and they just look absolutely awesome, very brutal stuff. But sometimes the only problem with it is enemies kind of jank out and clip out, and sometimes the animations can break. Also, it's not as, you know, like control, it doesn't give you that much control like Dark Souls does with weighty attacks, and you know, you really have to time everything. It's a little bit more action focused instead of being more deliberate and slow. And again, it's one of those Souls-like experience where it prioritizes aggressive play, like Lies of P, like Kazan, and you know, so many other recent Souls-like. I don't know why every Souls-like now has to prioritize aggressive play instead of more defensive play, which I personally like a lot more. Hiding behind a shield like a coward. What can I say? I'm a man of virtue. Okay, so the combat is where this game really hits its stride. You know, it's very brutal, weighty. Even if it does feel like it lacks a little bit of impact, I like my Souls experience to be a lot more deliberate and weighty, but still there is a lot of impact in this. but it's just a little bit simplistic with your kind of standard attacks. You do get the Mortal Shell abilities, so for example, one of them might be to actually turn your enemies into stone, actually petrify them, also freeze yourself, so then you can take a lot of damage and then unfreeze yourself and continue on with your attack. So that's kind of different from, perfect dodges or parries, but of course it does have perfect dodges, parries, the standard Souls-like experiences, but there are some unique mechanics that make Mortal Shell different, which I liked in the first game, but now it's just much more refined and polished. Give the video a like, I would appreciate it a lot, and consider subscribing to become a wise one today if you like a deeper look at video games, their thematics, philosophy, and all of that good stuff, a deeper analysis on gaming. You're in the right place. I try and be as objective as possible. I will tell you if I have a personal bias in my positives and negatives, but I always do mix in my opinions, obviously, because that's what reviews are, and we should look at games at a deeper level, because fundamentally they are art, and we need to, just remember that and prioritize that in this age of AI slop, okay?
Let's go already!
So basically there are 4 new weapon types. You've got your giant greatsword, you've got these guns that you can have access to, or crossbows and stuff like that. You can also dual wield with an axe and a dagger. You can wield like giant great axes, and there's even a scythe and a spear that you can use, which deals massive AoE damage, or kind of long range attacks and stuff like that, which I really like. So there's a lot of variation here. It does remind me of Elden Ring, where each one has a unique kind of animation to them, which I really like, because that adds a lot of play style. That adds a lot of, player agency and different play styles later. For example, you can play as a tank, which has less stamina, but, can take a lot of damage. You can play as this kind of dummy mummy one, which kind of, the more damage you take, the more stronger you will become, which is quite an interesting design. And then you can also play as kind of an assassin, or you can be kind of your standard knight. So there's lots of different play styles to this with your weapon types and your shell. And what I really like is basically they're not tied to each other. So you progress your character through, the standard leveling up system in Souls-likes with attribute points and stuff like that. But then your shell is completely separate, and you can choose, you have to actually commit to what shell you want to play as, and only get stronger by doing that, which I really like. Or you can dabble with all of them but be weaker. So there's a lot of thinking to the kind of individual playstyles, which I really like. And then basically upgrading is kind of just collecting resources throughout the world, exploration, finding kind of big loot chests to basically get these stone items, which then you can use to upgrade your gear and your shell and stuff like that. It's definitely more forgiving compared to other Souls-like experiences, and there's lots of tutorials and just things that take you out of it, like it is an action game, instead of, kind of not telling you anything. This is a game that kind of holds your hand in some ways, not as bad as, AAA slop. And yeah, I just really like that there's different, ways to play this game. Like, you can actually be a bard and basically, play music at an enemy, like a little lute, like, strum a guitar or hit a drum or whatever. And basically this will make enemies disengage from you, so then you can pull off, stealth attacks or backstabs and stuff like that. So I really like the different ways you can approach enemies, even if the combat itself is a little bit simplistic with how many combos you can string together and stuff like that. So like I said, where this game really shines is with the bosses. That is where the huge positive for me goes to. It is with the boss design. There's so many different bosses in this game. Some of them are absolutely insane. Like, you can fight this cripple in a wheelchair that has like rockets attached to it. Like, it's kind of nonsensical. That's what I mean when it comes to thematics and art design and stuff like that. Like, I don't think it's trying to take itself super seriously. It's not like Lies of P or the original Dark Souls or anything like that. But the bosses are so much fun because they have so much charm and character to them, and you never know what kind of boss you're going to come across. So it does kind of remind me of Elden Ring in that way. You could say that too many bosses, and some of them feel a little bit gimmicky or too easy, or kind of one note. But then you do find bosses that are just a lot of fun. And luckily it doesn't suffer from the spamming issue that Elden Ring has. They are very tightly designed for the most part, and all of them have their own unique attacks. Not many, but enough where you can actually learn the fight, and like each boss is an individual puzzle to solve, which I really like. And of course, different shells will have better attacks, and of course, depending on what shell you use, you'll be able to figure out what the boss's weakness is, because some of them are weaker to certain shell types and abilities and stuff like that. So I like the puzzle approach, even though at times they can be too easy and a little bit too gimmicky, because especially with your guns, they are so overpowered. You're basically John Wick in medieval times. So now let's talk about a few negatives, and then we're going to talk about some mixed points as well. So those are the main positives. Okay, so I do think it's a lot of fun. Just combat-wise, exploration, I'm going to talk about that, but combat-wise, it's a lot of fun, and it feels great, especially for a game, where bosses are probably the most important thing, and it nails the bosses, especially with just how much creativity there is. That really surprised me a lot. The first negative is just the overall aesthetic. Like, at times this game looks absolutely beautiful. The performance can be kind of hit or miss at times, but I just feel like thematically it doesn't really have a coherent art style. It's not as bad as some Souls-likes I've seen, but it does sometimes lack that kind of coherent aesthetic that it's going for. Like, it's almost going for like an alien, that weird, it's almost going for that kind of body horror, alien kind of art style, but then also generic fantasy, and then also kind of like a steampunk vibe at times. So it's a little bit all over the place, but it's not terrible. And the same thing with the story and thematics. You're not playing this for the story, okay? Let's be honest. Then of course it's the general jank that this game has. Like, it does still feel AA, but I do prefer AA to AAA. That's where that's where creativity can truly be found. But it definitely does feel AA. In areas with animations getting janky. Like I said, sometimes they completely break and you're not actually hitting anything. You're just kind of, fighting nothing, but you're still triggering the animation, and yeah, the enemy just gets away and stuff like that. So it does have some jank to it for sure, and simplicity in its design. Like Elden Ring, everyone loves that game. I'm not gonna say my personal opinions on it because others might not like me after that. To me, Elden Ring, sorry, I took a little bit too much crack before recording this. But Elden Ring certainly does have some problems compared to the tighter, well-designed layout of the original Dark Souls games. I feel like it misses with some things for sure. And one of them was the dungeons. Like, a lot of the dungeons were kind of copy and pasted. Now this does try and go the more handcrafted route, but still a lot of the dungeons do kind of end up feeling the same in their layout and design. Like level design here, that's something that they never really nailed. It's definitely an improvement compared to the first game, but I do still think that level design is kind of lacking in this game. I'm not expecting like an interconnected world like Dark Souls, but it could do something a little bit more different. And yeah, even Lords of the Fallen, I felt like had better level design with how you kind of, go into ghost mode and then like normal, mortal mode or whatever the hell it was. Like, that was kind of interesting, but this just feels a little bit too safe when it comes to its level design and its dungeon layout. Now, some more positives I want to highlight is it gives you a lot of accessibility. Like, you can choose if you want to play this kind of zoomed out or more zoomed in, like traditional third person, or more action combat style, which I really like. Performance wise is a bit of a hit or miss, I would say, in this game. I did have some FPS issues no matter what I was doing. That's on PC anyway, but maybe they've patched that at this point. I really like the fact that you can actually get kicked out of your shell, and when this happens you can still carry on fighting, which is super cool, and it adds a lot of risk-reward situation to the game. And also, not just that, but like with perfect parries, like there's such like huge damage boosts you can do to the bosses. And then this brings me on to another negative, sadly, and that is just the exploration. The exploration to me just feels a little bit lacking. Loot is so obvious, and they have a lot of charm to some of these areas. Like the NPCs can be dancing around, kind of quaint little villagers. You can get these demonic, animals that will surprise you, or I won't spoil it, but some things that you don't think are enemies turn out to be enemies. Like some pretty cool, interesting designs. But like exploration just feels very kind of obviously laid out. Like, you will see a loot chest clearly, and then you just go and loot it. There's not like interesting characters really to stumble upon. Like I said, that's what it's kind of missing, that thematic, that kind of interesting storytelling that good Souls-likes have, like Lies of P, where you can do that kind of exploration where it feels like what you're doing actually matters. This feels more like you're getting from the next area to the next area to fight the next boss, and the kind of openness of it feels a little bit pointless in some areas. But yeah, the boss design, the combat is good, the dungeons for the most part are good, the progression I really like. There's so much I like about this game, the enemy variation and the tactics that they use, the AI and everything. I think that's very well done. It's just some of the kind of overworld that just feels like it's lacking a little bit of depth.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
So yeah, you won't find many interesting side characters, sadly, within this game. There are a few, and it's got the obvious, kind of callbacks where it's trying to reference Dark Souls, like with the big milk lady, the big milkers, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a little bit on the nose in some regards, but it's so much of an improvement compared to the first game. And Mortal Shell did have interesting mechanics, and honestly, that's what I care about, interesting mechanics, even if some of the world building, the lore, the storytelling, the philosophy, the thematics behind why you're doing these things, like why are you this weird creature who has to embody shells, like it does explain it, but like it doesn't go deep. And the same for exploration, like it does feel kind of like a game world instead of like a world like Elden Ring where you get truly lost and immersed in. But all of that stuff doesn't really matter when, those are personal biases by the way, but all of that stuff doesn't really matter when you look at how good the bosses are, how good the combat flows together, even if it is simple at times. But the amount of variation with the combat that you can choose is what makes it fun, and the first game did that pretty well, but now it just gives you way more options. And in total, I just like how you progress and level up. Like, it has such a good sense of progression. So many Souls-likes fail at that, or they don't get the balancing right. Like, yes, you can be a little bit overpowered in this at times, but then you will find a boss that completely just destroys you. And it really has that good sense of adventure where you are, truly making your character a lot stronger as you progress throughout the game. And it just makes you feel like a badass, especially with these cool animations that you do, and the combat itself is very just, flashy and dynamic. And Mortal Shell 2 definitely has some unique mechanics that make it feel different from other Souls-like, and the combat itself is just satisfying as hell. So would I recommend Mortal Shell 2 if you're a Dark Souls fan? Yes, I would, definitely, but maybe on a sale. If you're not a huge Dark Souls fan or not a huge Souls-like person, I don't think this game will be for you, to be honest, because it is still difficult. And the only thing that really holds this game back is, the kind of polish that it needs and more identity. But it does do so many interesting things, and I just commend a game that tries new ideas, even if the execution isn't always there. And the fact that you can just play as a bard and literally destroy enemies with the power of music. Check out my music, by the way. Oh, yeah, that's a pretty smart transition there, Xavier. Wow, you must be a YouTube genius or something. But the fact that it has so many cool ideas in this game, even if some of them don't land, is commendable. So yes, I do think that Mortal Shell 2 is an interesting game, to be sure, and a good Souls-like, even if it doesn't reach the levels of Platinum status. But it's striving, it's reaching towards greatness, and for that I can really commend it. So there you go, that is my Mortal Shell 2 review. I do hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think about the dungeon system, because that's quite interesting and new to Dark Souls, kind of happened with Elden Ring, but it definitely leans into that kind of action clearing out dungeon experience. with a lot of boss variation, which is a little bit different from traditional Souls, where, you know, it's kind of a journey that you go on and it's more optional with what you do and stuff like that. So let me know what you think of the format. Let me know if you enjoyed this review, and I hope to see you in the next video, my wise ones. Take care of yourselves, have a blessed day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.